Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to England once again, and we're going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So these guys are another relatively new addition to the English beer scene. They're a brewery that have a really good pedigree behind them, in fact, and they have built a very good reputation for themselves in their short lifetime so far. My English beer tubing colleagues have told me very good things about them too, and it is a brewery that I wanted to cover on the channel before I headed out east, so definitely glad that I managed to get the opportunity to do this. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases as of the time of filming. It is a style that these guys are supposed to do very, very well, and it is supposed to be a very nice example of that style too. So, needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head down to Liverpool, and we're going to go to the Triangle area, and that means that we're going to have a look at my first beer from Azvex Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Seen Rabbits. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this is another New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this is another beer that I picked up at the Caledonian Craft Beer Merchant over in Dunfermline. Colin in there always has a really good selection of English stuff and Scottish things. And this is a brewery that he recommended to me, and this particular beer was his favourite one. So I just went with that because he's never kind of steered me in the wrong direction before. And the other thing about this that I really quite liked was the fact that it's a Southern Hemisphere hop beer. So yeah, I'm a big fan of my Aussie and Kiwi hops, I have to say. But yeah, since it's a Liverpool review too, I have to give a shout out to two of my friends. That's Adam of Mersey Beers and Peter the Clueless Drinker. They live very, very close to Liverpool, of course, so massive shout out to them as well. Go and check out their channels. I'll try to remember to put the links in the video description below. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it's going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from, or I will do I should say, from Azvex Brewing Company in the future. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember that you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like, and then yeah, if I review beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the English playlist along with a number of other things, and that will be getting added to it regularly over the next little while. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Azvex Brewing Company for the first time. So, as I've mentioned to you already, Azvex Brewing Company are based in Liverpool in England, and the company was founded back in 2020 by Adam Henderson. So Adam has a background as an engineer, and he worked for Rolls-Royce for a number of years, but he also dabbled with homebrewing and got really deep into this hobby. But having received good feedback on his beers, he decided he wanted to take part in one of Brewdog's competitions, and he took part in this and he won. And after this he went on to found Neon Raptor Brewing, first as a gypsy brewery, and then they settled in Nottingham in 2018. So over the next few years they continued to develop new recipes and grow the business and things like this, but he remained with Neon Raptor only until 2020 during the COVID pandemic, because he said that he realised he wanted to go in a different direction from his business partners, and so he decided to sell his shares in the company and found his own new brand. So for this new brewery he chose Liverpool as his location, and he found a premises at King Edward Triangle, and he completely renovated the unit. He installed a 4-vessel brew house from Bespoke Brewing Systems, and they went on to release their first beers commercially in 2021, and the next year in 2022, I think it was in April, they opened up a tap room on site, which is supposed to be very, very nice. But over the last year or so they've been continuing to release new beers and have a go at new styles and things like this, and as of July 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 130 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. But yeah, that is everything that I can really tell you about Azvex Brewing Company for the moment. They are still very, very new on the scene, but as I say, they've been building up a really good reputation for themselves and producing some very, very nice beers. But yeah, if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and have a little look at this beer itself. So I'll let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open up. There you can see the Azvex Brewing Company symbol there. Apparently the name Azvex is just kind of made up and quite random because Adam wanted people to be able to find this brewery when they googled it, because yeah, so many other breweries have elements of other words in their names, they can be difficult to find when you Google them. But there you can see the rabbits in their emo or scene phase, if you like, and I think it said on the back that the artwork in this one, did it say who did the artwork on this one on the back? I'm sure I saw that earlier. Yeah, can't really see that now at this point, but yeah, I have to say, I do like the artwork on this one, and of course that's the idea, to make the beer stand out, and people love animals. But you can see plain silver top on the can here. It's a 440ml one, and there you can see on the back the Azvex Brewing Company symbol. So yeah, I can't remember how much this beer actually cost me. I'm just going to take the sweat off the can so that it looks a little bit nicer for the video. But yeah, as I said earlier, this one comes in at 8% ABV. It's a New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. This one is hopped with Nelson Sauvin and Motueka from New Zealand, along with Galaxy from Australia. So Nelson Sauvin, as we know, comes in with about 16% alpha acid. It has this very distinctive white, green, grapey, gooseberry type flavour to it. Motueka is about 8% alpha acid, and it gives you this lovely kind of quite juicy lime actually. And then Galaxy is an Australian hop, about 14% alpha acid. It gives you a big, quite pungent passion fruit, lovely juicy mango, and also a good little bit of pineapple in my experience. So this is a proper Southern Hemisphere hopped New England IPA, and that was the main reason I went with this one. There was another one there at the time, but it had a mix of Southern and Northern Hemisphere hops. I kind of just thought it was nice to stick to the Southern Hemisphere for this. But yeah, let's crack on with this one though, get it open and see what it is. The Scene Rabbits 8% New England Double IPA. My first taste of beer from Azvex Brewing Company. But I'm a pretty big fan of some of the stuff that's come out of Neon Raptor over the years, so I think this one will be quite interesting as well. So yeah, this one could be quite interesting. So in terms of the appearance of this one, we've got most of the beer out and into the glass now, but you can see it's poured with about a finger of a frothy, I would say, that is a perfect white head actually. I would say that one is perfect white. You can see it's got some medium-sized bubbles just at the surface of the liquid, some fluffier ones sitting above that, and then some nice bumpy ones above there too. But in terms of the colour of this beer, it's pretty much as you would expect from a New England IPA. Now I always like comparing the colours of New England IPAs to different fruit juices, because that's just what they remind me of, and I would say that this one's actually a very, very bright yellow, rather akin to a bit of mango juice. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect the colour of it too. But when it comes to New England IPAs, or any kind of IPA for that matter, you don't often have to care about barrel aging and adjuncts and stuff like this. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head. But yeah, not too much in the way of visible carbonation. In terms of the level of haze that you get from this one, it's not one of the soupier and gloopier New Englands that I've come across. It does have a good level of hazy character to it, but remember, the level of haze in these beers depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. But yeah, I have to say, I think it does look pretty damn nice, to be honest with you. Nothing overly surprising about this beer, as I say, when you consider what style it is in terms of its appearance. But yeah, let's have a wee look at the aroma and see what this beer is all about. I'm very, very curious about this. Oh, this beer, it does smell very nice actually. Yeah, it's great, this one. I think this is going to be really good. So, first impression of this beer is that it's quite an oaty and barley malt leaning New England IPA. Now, as I've said in many reviews before, for me, when it comes to the malty and yeasty side of things with these beers, they can lean 6 different ways. There's 6 different elements you should think about. The sort of farmhousey and yeasty character, the rye leaning grainy side of things as well. Those 2 elements are a bit more common in American brewed New England IPAs because the style really started out like that. If you think like Alchemist, Lawson's Finest Liquid, Hill Farmstead, those breweries had that really kind of yeasty farmhousey bready character to them. But then you've also got the barley malt bread, the wheaty bitiness, the oaty creaminess, and the sweeter side of things as well. And this is how the European brewed New England IPAs have developed for me. A lot of them are based on the likes of the Trillium kind of more wheaty bitey side of things, and the Treehouse kind of more oaty creamy side. So yeah, these are things that we should think about when looking at these New England IPAs. But like I say, for me, this one leans more toward the barley malt and oaty creamy side of things. It's a lovely smelling beer in that regard actually, and it gives you everything you'd want from the style. You've got a lovely big kind of breadiness, smoothness and creaminess coming out of it, nice bright green component, and also the kind of juicy fruity characters to it as well. But let's break the aroma of this one down for you and describe it a wee bit more in depth before we actually taste the thing, as this is what we always do. So yeah, backbone of the beer. For me, you absolutely get a good little bit of that kind of fresh white bready bread crust coming out of this one, and I have to say that is great with this beer. So lovely, as I say, fresh white bready bread crust in the backbone. And on top of that, it smells like it's fresh out of the bakery. That lovely, just it's got a little bit of flour and stuff on it there. I do get a little bit, a very slight touch of woodiness out of this one. There's also a little bit of a kind of Jacob's cream cracker character in the backbone of this beer too. But then above that, you start to get the big bready notes pushing their way out of this beer. So yeah, for me, the backbone on top of the kind of bread crusty character, you do get a lovely kind of fluffy white bready note coming out of this one. Yeah, a little bit of a wholemeal brown bready character, big fluffy white bready notes in there. And yeah, I do think that goes together really very nicely in this one. It's quite straightforward in the middle of the nose, this one, to be honest with you, in terms of the bready character. It's a very smooth, fluffy, airy white bread. There's a little touch of sweetness to it, and then on top of that, you've got a more, you do have a little bit of a more kind of wheaty, you do have a little bit more of a kind of wheaty character just coming out on top of that. There's a little bit of wheaty bitiness in the back of the nose, but overall, I would say that the wheat's kind of acting as like a densifying and smoothing agent in this beer. You can smell that the wheat has a lovely smoothness to it, it makes the bready character just that little bit thicker, and as I say, there's just a little tiniest touch of bitiness on at the back of the nose with this beer, which is good. But yeah, on top of that bready character, you start to get the oaty notes out of the beer. Now, as I've said with IPAs, New England's particularly, many a time, is that your oaty character is always a good indicator of how old or how fresh your New England IPA is. Essentially, the creamier the beer smells, the oats smell, the fresher the beer is, the drier the oats are, the older the beer is. That's just something I've kind of picked up over time. That argument falls down though if you're talking about an oat cream IPA, so just be aware. But yeah, for me this one smells really nice and very fresh. You're getting a good little bit of creaminess out of this one, and you can smell just a teeny little bit of dryness from the oats, but a lot of oaty creaminess in this one. I think it goes together really nicely. But then on top of that, as I say, on top of that, you've got a lovely little touch. There is just a wee tiny hint of that Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotch in there, but it's really not very prominent. I have to say that it really is not all that prominent in this one, but I think it goes together really, really nicely, and like I say, it gets a big thumbs up from me in that sense. Yeah, I like that. with this one. I do really like how that pieces together. The malt base in this is very, very nice. I think it's going to taste great. But yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of things then, green component. The green component for me is really quite smooth and quite bright. As I've said to you before, when it comes to IPAs, there are 3 types of hoppings you can use. We'll use a 90-minute wort boil as our model to explain them. You have early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That gives you mainly bitterness, and it will translate to a kind of deep, dank flavour and aroma in terms of your green component. Late addition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil, that gives you mainly flavour, but a little bit of flavour and aroma. It also gives you a little bit of bitterness too. That will give you a nice bright green component in the aroma. And then late addition, well, not late addition hopping, dry hopping, sorry, my brain isn't working, too tired. Dry hopping, it takes place after the wort boil is complete, and that's all about flavour and aroma. And again, that gives you a very bright green component in terms of the aroma. So New England IPAs rely on the latter 2, late addition and dry hopping. West Coast IPAs use all 3. That's why they have that deeper, danker aroma, and New England's have the brighter aromas in terms of the green component. So for me, this beer has the tiniest little bit of earthiness. There is a little bit of herbal character in there as well, but you do have a really nice, bright floral aromaticity coming out of this one, which isn't surprising based on my experiences with these hops in the past. But I do get quite a little bit of a wet grassiness out of this one, which was a wee bit of a surprise, I have to say. So lovely wet grassiness coming out of this beer, and then on top of that you have some lovely juicy fruity characteristics coming out of this one. The green component there really isn't too much to say about it. Like I say, a little bit of brighter floral character, some lovely little bits of grassiness and things in there as well, and then the focus is more on the fruit. And if you know these hops quite well, then yeah, you are going to get these sort of notes out of them. But yeah, for me, in terms of the in terms of the fruity side of things, you do have a little bit of a more in terms of the fruity side of the beer, it's really quite smooth and quite tropical. So yeah, the fruity side of things for me, you get quite a little bit of passion fruit of this one, which is obviously from the Galaxy. There's lovely big juicy mangoes, and then I'm getting quite a little bit of apricot and papaya too, to be honest with you. And then on top of that, there's a little bit of peach. You do get a little bit of that sharper peach too, which is interesting. So peach in the top of the nose, soft passion fruit, juicy mango underneath, definitely apricot and papaya too. But then you can smell the Motueka and the Nelson Sauvignon at the front of the nose, that big oily gooseberry type character. And then yeah, you've got a big kind of juicy limey note coming out of it too. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is really very, very nice in that sense. So yeah, gets a big thumbs up from me actually. I really do like how this beer goes about its business in that sense of the word. So yeah, as I always say, take a wee bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think, I think we can take this. What we can, how do you say? We can enjoy that aroma, and I think, just as I always say, my brain really is tired today. Take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma before you get stuck into it. But I think we can have a taste of this one now and see what it's all about. Lovely, lovely smelling beer, this one. But yeah, let's put the rest of it out into the glass. There you go, that looks good. And now we can go for it. So yeah, this is the Seen Rabbits, a New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Azvex Brewing in Liverpool in England. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, I'm going to say straight away, that is pretty damn nice. First impression of it, it's kind of what I would expect. Big, it really leans very much toward the oats, this one. The barley malt takes a little bit of time to kind of show itself, but it's a really thick, smooth, creamy New England IPA, this one. Soft, juicy and fruity, lovely little bit of floral character and grassiness to it. it goes together really quite nicely. I'd say it is very, the flavour that you get out of this one is really what you'd expect when you think about the aroma, to be honest with you. But yeah, it just feels a little bit thicker and more creamy than I was expecting. And that's the only deviation, I would say. But yeah, big thumbs up to Azvex Brewing Company for this one. I think this is pretty damn solid. So yeah, where do we start with this one then? Yeah, middle third of your palate then, the backbone of the beer. You've got that lovely, fresh, white bready bread crust just forming the backbone of the thing. As I've often said, a lot of the bread crusty backbones in these beers, they feel as if they're like straight out of the bakery. They've got that little bit of an almost kind of floury character to them. You just feel that soft, floury powder there, which is interesting. Then further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of woodiness, which is good. You get, as I say, you get that little bit of woodiness in there, and then above the bread crust, you can feel there's a nice wee touch of Jacob's cream cracker sort of stuff coming out of this one. So, yeah, the way that this beer goes together in that sense is really very, very nice. So like I say, bread crust in the base, Jacob's cream cracker, a little bit of woodiness further forward, and then yeah, the way that goes together is the way that goes together, I think, is really nice in a sense. I do like how you get a little bit more and more dryness out of this beer from that backbone the further into the aftertaste that you go. But above that backbone, above the cracker, there's a very slight layer of like a wholemeal, brown bready type character coming out of this one. So yeah, lovely wholemeal, brown bready type character, and then above that you've got this the fluffy white bready layer, and the white bready layer is actually it takes up most of the depth of that middle third of your palate, to be honest with you, and it just feels lovely, fluffy and airy, and it's also got a kind of big density to it as well, which I think is great. So, for me, yeah, the big density, the big kind of fluffy density in that middle third of the palate, it's really got a lovely bit of sweetness to it. As I say, the further into it that you go, but I think it comes across really nicely, to be honest with you. On top of that fluffier white bready layer, though, you can feel the more dense wheat layer just at the top, kind of smoothing out the beer, and then above all of that, you get the oatiness. And the oats, the more and more that I drink of this beer, the oats take a bit more of a back seat. I think the more that I drink of it, I start to get a wee bit more of the wheat kind of taking over. So yeah, I'd be very curious to see what percentage the malt base is in terms of its oat, wheat and barley ratio, because it's interesting in that sense. But like I say, you get that lovely smooth wheaty character there that densifies out the breadiness, and then on top of that you get the oaty character coming out of the beer. So down the middle line of your palate, you get a little bit of you do get a little bit more of a kind of, you do get that little bit of oaty creaminess there. You can feel the density of the oats just going down the middle line of your tongue, and as you move out toward the edges, of your palate, you can feel the oaty character just gets that little bit drier. So, yeah, the way that the beer goes together in that regard is really quite nice. In the dead centre of your palate, you can feel there's a little circle there where you get a wee touch of a kind of Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. But this beer really is not a sweet New England IPA. It really is a more bready, wheaty and oaty sort of affair, this one. And I think that just pieces together really very, very nicely. Yeah, it's a big thumbs up from me in that regard. Yeah, middle third of your palate on this one is really quite nice. Yeah, so I think we can go to the back third of your palate now. I think we've said everything we need to about that. And as I've often said, on the back third of your palate, you're going to get similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, but they just come out in different intensities. But remember that trend with the palate, that sweeter flavours come out further forward, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of bready build up in there, a wee touch of wholemeal brown bread in the base, but mainly that dense and slightly sweet white bread sitting above that. You can feel a little touch of wheat at the top there, but then yeah, the base of that back third of your palate, you've got the bread crusty character there, which feels that little bit drier and a little bit more kind of grainy. You've got the cracker once again, which feels that little bit more dry. You've got a wholemeal brown bready layer in there, which feels a little bit more dense, and then above that you've got you've got that lighter, you've got the white bready character there, which just feels lighter and more airy in comparison to the middle third of your palate. So yeah, the way that that goes together I think is really quite nice. So yeah, for me, in terms of the the above the white bready character on that back third of your palate, you can feel a little bit of the wheat just creeping over the top of that, and the wheat does have a little bit of bitiness on that back third of the palate, and then above everything else you start to get some of the kind of yeasty character out of the beer, and the yeasty character in this beer is quite interesting. Like, it feels you can get that little more dense ball of bread in there, but it feels like a really dense kind of brown bready character actually. So yeah, lovely kind of dense brown bready note in there for me. Yeah, denser kind of brown bready character, and you can feel it has a little bit of woodiness, a little bit of crackeriness to it. I don't get so much in the way of honeycomb in this one. I very often get honeycomb from the yeasty side of beers, but not in this case. Really no, but the yeasty character sits above the wheat on that back third of your palate. But yeah, I think that goes together really nicely. But you can definitely feel the on the back third of your palate, the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way that this one goes together, I think, is really quite nice in terms of the malty side of the beer. But let's go on to the green component then, and we'll move to the hoppy and fruity side of the beer. Back corners of the palate, you absolutely get a little touch of earthiness in there, which is interesting. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what hop that's going to come from. Probably all of them a little bit, to be honest with you. So you've got that little bit of earthiness in there. You've got that little touch of herbal character, and as you push further forward toward toward the kind of front corners of your palate, you can feel that the green component gets gradually more sort of floral actually, and that goes together really nicely. So yeah, for me you get that nice sort of floral aromaticity coming out of the beer. It does get a little bit brighter and more kind of zingy almost into the further into the aftertaste that you go. But yeah, round the front curve of the tongue, you can feel the beer gets a little bit lighter and more grassy. It's got quite a wet, grassy character to it, but you do certainly get a little touch of zestiness coming out of this beer, which I think is really very, very nice. And again, that gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I really like that about this beer actually. The green component is really nice, and the floral character that you get here builds a good bridge with the slightly more wheaty bitiness that you get further back on the palate. And I would say this beer gets more and more floral and more wheaty the more that you drink of it actually. That's an interesting thing about it. But I think we've covered the green component, to be honest with you. It's quite a wet green component the further into the aftertaste that you go too. But let's focus on that let's focus on that front third of your palate then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a kind of bready build up in there. You can feel that there's a nice little bit of wholemeal brown bready character in there, some white bread just sitting on top of that. Then the base of that the base of that front third of your palate, you have a really nice kind of as I say, you've got a really nice kind of bread crusty. You've got the bread crusty base in there. You've got a bit of the cracker, and then you've got this white bread on top, which actually feels quite smooth and slightly sweet in a sense. on the front of this, on the front third of your palate there, but you can feel that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer, just sitting on top of that. So let's look at those fruity flavours. So yeah, for me, the fruity side of the beer, it's quite, it really is quite interesting. At the back of that, front third of your palate, you get a really nice, how would we say, yeah, you get a little bit of that more intense kind of passion fruity sort of note, which is going to come from the Galaxy. It's maybe very slightly grapefruity, but I hesitate to say that. But the back half of that front third of your palate is all about the Galaxy. So there's a very slight bit of grapefruit, bit of passion fruit in there, and as you move further forward, you get lots of juicy mango out of it, and as you reach the dead centre of that front third of your palate, you get a wee bit more sort of, you do get a little bit of that kind of dry apricot-y note and a little bit of papaya, and then a wee bit of an oily pineapple sitting on top of all of that. But as soon as you go into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's all about the New Zealand hops. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, for me, in the front half of that front third of your palate, you get a really nice, you get that oily gooseberry, white green grapey character from the Nelson Sauvin sitting underneath, and the juicier lime from the Motueka sits on top of that. So definitely, yeah, back half of that front third of your palate is all about the Aussie side of things, the Galaxy. Then the further forward that you go in this one, the more, yeah, white green grapey character and sort of limey notes you get from the New Zealand side of things. It's great. It really is a very, very nice beer, this one in that sense, but very barley malt, and you get more wheat out of this one. The further into the aftertaste you go, you get more floral character, but it comes across as a very bready and oaty New England actually, and the fruity character is quite oily, I would say that, but yeah, it gets a big thumbs up from me in that respect. Yeah, I like that. I do like how that goes together. So I think we can round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. For me, this beer is kind of top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. It's quite a thick New England IPA, this one, I would say, and that kind of suits it. It's actually got a mix of kind of creamy character to it and oily. It's somewhere in the middle. It's quite hard to place actually, but yeah, a mix of creamy and oily. And yeah, I think the carbonation's just got a little touch of crispness to it. But as I said, the malt base is really smooth in this one. It's more a kind of bready New England IPA. It's not overly creamy, it's not overly sweet. The hoppy characters that you get out of this one are also really nice. It's not an overly bitter New England IPA, but it's also it's got a lovely kind of little bit of bitterness and things to it. I think it's probably a standard 30-ish IBU that this one has, maybe 40 at a push, but I think it's more likely to be a 30. In terms of the in terms of the juicy, fruity side of things, the malt base, as I said, it's a little bit dry underneath, kind of smooth and almost like savoury in the middle, little tiny touches, sweetness on top with a little bit of creaminess, but yeah, mainly a smooth malt base. And you've also got this kind of juicy, fruity sort of character coming out of it too. So yeah, I think the way this beer goes together is really quite nice in that sense, and it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I like that with this one. I really do like how this goes together. But yeah, very smooth, oily, and creamy IPA. Very tropical leaning in the beginning, but more oily the further into the aftertaste that you go. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the Seen Rabbits, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Azvex Brewing Company in Liverpool, down in England. A brewery that I've wanted to cover on the channel for quite a wee while. And if this is what the New England IPAs are like, I can see why people like these. And this is one of the thicker ones that I've come across in recent times, especially, well, mainly when I'm thinking about the 8% double category. But very good beer and worth checking out if you get the chance. But yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Azvex Brewing Company as well. We will return to these guys at some point in the fairly near future, but if you want to see more reviews from these guys, check out my friend Adam of Mercy Beers and my other friend Peter, the Clueless Drinker. They cover these beers a little bit more regularly. But until the next time, Slàinte, Skål, cheers. I'll see you guys in the next one. The Seen Rabbits, 8% New England Double IP from Azvex Brewing Company in Liverpool. Ciao just now.